heavyweight champion, the one, the only, Johnny Jones!
Last thing.
They call him GOAT, the greatest of all time. Jon Jones once choked out Cyril Gane in just 2 minutes and made a list of UFC legends disappear into the past. But he's also the same man who got handcuffed right in the lobby of Caesar's Palace. Doping violations, domestic violence incidents leading to stripped titles and suspensions. No one has sabotaged Jon Jones more than Jon Jones himself. And no one has survived so many mistakes, yet still kept everything championship belts. The fear of his opponents, and a financial empire that makes everyone look up to him. Jon Jones used his money to build his own ecosystem, investing in recovery technology for special forces, owning shares in an independent MMA promotion, and designing private training centers for hand-picked fighters. He's no longer just a champion, he's running the game. What allowed Jon Jones to turn bloody fights and a string of scandals into a launchpad for his financial and power empire in the world of combat sports? Let's dive into the life of one of MMA's greatest and most controversial fighters, Jon Jones, the skinniest kid in the family. Jonathan Dwight Jones, the name that would later become a nightmare in the octagon, was born on July 19, 1987 in Rochester, New York. But before he was known as Bones, before he became the youngest UFC champion, Jon Jones was just a skinny kid living in a devout, yet internally conflicted family. Jon's father, Arthur Jones Sr., was a Pentecostal pastor who spent most of his life teaching about faith, purity, and goodness. He openly admitted that he didn't want his son to become a fighter. "I wanted him to be a pastor," he said, "a shepherd of souls, not someone who fights for a living." In contrast, Jon's mother, Camille Jones, was a diligent nurse who quietly battled diabetes for years until her passing in 2017. Jon always said that in his mother's quiet death, he learned the value of sacrifice and silence. The Jones family had 4 children. Jon was the 3rd child, sandwiched between 2 equally prominent brothers, Arthur Jones Jr., who later played NFL for the Baltimore Ravens, and Chandler Jones, who also became an NFL star for the New England Patriots. But among his burly brothers, Jon was the skinniest, weakest, and quietest child, which is why, as early as 9th grade, his friends called him Bones. Not because he was good at fighting, but because he looked like a walking skeleton. Yet, that skinny physique created a different Jon Jones. When he attended Union Endicott High School, Jon didn't become a gym leader. Instead, he chose wrestling, a sport that doesn't require brute strength but demands patience, strategy, and agility. He quickly won a state championship and was recognized as one of New York's most promising wrestlers at the time. Simultaneously, Jon also played football as a defensive lineman. He was often criticized for being too light to play professionally, but was always there for crucial tackles. That was the first manifestation of his predatory instinct, something that would later become his signature in the UFC cage. However, Jon's childhood wasn't just about sports and church. He endured a loss that never truly healed. Jon's older sister, Carmen, died from a brain tumor at just 17. Her sudden passing plunged the entire family into grief. Jon once recounted that every time he stepped into the ring, he still thought of her, the person he believed was watching his every move from somewhere else. After graduating high school, Jon attended Iowa Central Community College, where he won the NJCAA Wrestling Championship. He then enrolled at Morrisville State College, pursuing criminal justice, a decision that pleased his father, who thought his son was finally choosing the right path. But it was at that moment that Jon dropped out. He decided he wouldn't become a pastor. He wouldn't be a police officer. He wouldn't pursue a civic responsibility career as expected. He chose to fight. He chose to become Bones, the name the world would later remember. Jon Jones's childhood chapter closed, not with a flashy moment, but with a choice that disappointed his father, yet shaped MMA history from a skinny kid in New York, stepping out of the shadow of the church and heading straight into the steel cage, where his soul would be defined by knockouts. The unknown becomes MMA's terror. Jon Jones entered professional MMA in April 2008 as an unknown, taking his first fights for just a few $100s at small promotions in the northeastern U.S., but within 3 months, he won 6 consecutive fights, all by knockout or submission. A terrifying pace. A ruthless instinct. By August of that year, the UFC invited him to make his debut as an emergency replacement for an injured fighter at UFC 87. Jones defeated Andre Gusmão by unanimous decision, and from then on, he never left the global MMA map. In March 2011, at 23 years old, Jones defeated Mauricio Shogun Rua to become the youngest champion in UFC history. But what was remarkable wasn't just the belt, it was how he earned it. Spinning back elbows, flying knees, acrobatic moves like an assassin in an action movie. Before Jon, the light heavyweight division was where older, more seasoned fighters clashed. After Jon, it became a stage for speed, versatility, and absolute control. And then the storm began. He defeated Rampage Jackson, Lyoto Machida, Rashad Evans, Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen, Glover Teixeira, Daniel Cormier, a long list of legends broken by someone who had never truly lost. His only official loss, against Matt Hamill in 2009, was due to an illegal elbow, but professionally, Jon Jones has never been convincingly defeated. However, the glory in the cage always came with darkness outside of it. From 2015 to 2021, his career was plagued by a series of scandals, from a hit-and-run accident, cocaine use, to 2 doping violations, one before UFC 200, another after a prominent victory at UFC 214. He lost his belt, was suspended from fighting, and faced backlash from fans. Even his KO victory over Daniel Cormier, one of the best performances in UFC history, was overturned and changed to a no contest. Yet, after every fall, Jones returned, angrier, more refined, more dangerous, in March 2023 after 3 years away from the sport. He returned at UFC 285, moving up to heavyweight for the first time, and submitted Cyril Gane in just over 2 minutes. An undeniable victory, making him a 2-division champion and cementing his GOAT greatest of all-time status in the eyes of many. Less than 8 months later, at UFC 309, Jones knocked out Stipe Miocic, widely considered the greatest heavyweight in history, with a spinning back kick, ending the fight in less than 2 rounds. With that victory, he had 12 title defenses, more than anyone in UFC history. At 37, Jones is no longer the brash fighter knocking on Dana White's door, demanding more money. He has become a symbol of power inside the cage and outside of it. There are reports that Jones is negotiating a title unification bout with Tom Aspinall, while also hinting at a super fight with Francis Ngannou, a match that could break MMA's historical revenue records. While it's still unclear how much longer he will continue to conquer, one thing is undeniable. Inside the steel cage, no one can strip him of his crown through skill alone. And that's what will etch Bones into history, not just as an undefeated fighter, but as someone who turned chaos into art. A champion only buys what he needs. Jon Jones has never been the type of person who lives to draw attention. He doesn't post pictures of mansions with infinity pools or wear heavy chains when he goes out. For Jones, assets aren't for showing off, they're for serving a purpose. That's how he creates distance between a true champion and the rest, between an MMA legend and fighters who just like to show off on social media. This quiet, yet very real distance begins in Albuquerque, New Mexico, That's where Jon has chosen to live and train for years, far from Hollywood, far from Las Vegas, and far from the noise that the entertainment industry brings, in Albuquerque. Jones has a sprawling compound designed like a private fortress. The house has a separate training area, a private garage, and a modern gym equipped with neuro-recovery technology, advanced technologies he's invested in to keep his body battle-ready. Occasionally, he shares everyday moments there, like his daughters playing in the living room or a family meal in the bright kitchen. No captions, no background music, no effects, just a father enjoying rare, quiet moments with his loved ones. Those who have followed Jon for a long time understand it's his quiet zone, where there are no scandals, no spotlight, only peace after each fight. Besides his home in Albuquerque, Jones also owns another property near Rochester, New York, where he was born and raised. The classic two-story wooden house, located near the edge of a forest, was once valued at around $950,000. It's not large or luxurious like the mansions of the elite, but it has something special. The house is still under the name of Jessie Moses, his longtime girlfriend and the mother of his children. This shows that, despite how much his life has changed, Jon still maintains a strong connection to his roots, both geographically and in terms of people. When it comes to vehicles, Jones isn't known for multi-million-dollar collections like Floyd Mayweather or Conor McGregor, but the cars he chooses have clear personal meaning. His silver Chevrolet Corvette C8, sleek, low, and sharp, was a gift he gave himself after his impressive victory over Cyril Gane at UFC 285. The matte black BMW M4 with its wide rear wheels and powerful engine is the car he often uses to drive home after late-night training sessions, fast, discreet, truly embodying a fighter's essence. And the Tesla Model X, a practical electric SUV, is his choice whenever he takes his children to school. A quiet, unassuming car, yet full of comfort and safety. There was a time when Jon owned a Bentley Continental GT, a symbol of success that many fighters crave. But in 2012, he caused a serious accident while driving under the influence, and the car was heavily damaged. Since then, he completely stopped owning overly luxurious cars. For Jon, strength isn't in the car you drive. It's in how you get back up after every fall. Additionally, according to some sources in the startup and military industries, Jon is currently a co-investor in a luxury hybrid off-road truck project codenamed Project Ronin. This is a specialized vehicle designed for the military and special forces, built to operate in the harshest conditions. The project is kept quite secret, but involves several notable names in the defense and extreme sports industries, if the project succeeds. It could be a major turn that takes Jones from the MMA world into the field of technology and military manufacturing, a move few would expect. All of this shows that Jon Jones never wanted to be a Hollywood-style celebrity. He doesn't live to be seen, he lives to control everything from his house, his car, to the way he steps into the steel cage. He doesn't buy assets for others to marvel at, he buys what he needs to maintain his best physical and mental state. The woman with a steel heart. They say that to love someone like Jon Jones, you need a heart of steel to overcome all the scandals, and if that's true, then Jessie Moses, the woman who has been by his side since high school, is precisely the one who possesses that heart. Jessie and Jon met in high school in New York, when Jon was still just the skinny kid with buck teeth they called Bones. She was beautiful, discreet, and always stayed behind the scenes. When Jon went to compete at Iowa Central Community College, Jessie became pregnant with their first child, Leah. Jon was only 20, had never won a title, and had never earned $1 from the UFC. But Jessie stayed. She believed. She waited. In 2013, Jon knelt and proposed to Jessie on an Easter afternoon. There was a ring, photos, and even an Instagram post. But the wedding never happened. No white wedding dress, no church, no formal title of legal wife. For the next decade, this woman remained by Jon's side when he won belts, when he was stripped of them, when he fell into drug crises, when he was arrested for a hit and run, when the entire UFC turned its back. Jessie Moses didn't speak out. She didn't respond to the press. She didn't sue. She didn't complain. She just quietly stayed by his side, taking their children to church and then coming home. They have 3 daughters together: Leah, 2008, Carmen Nicole, 2009, named after Jon's late sister, and Olivia Haven, 2013. And in 2024, Jon unexpectedly revealed that he also has a son who has never appeared in the media, for whom he has 50-50 custody. This was information that had not been widely publicized, but it's enough to show that Jon's family picture is not perfect. It's messy, layered, and has cracks, but it's not easily broken. The 2021 incident in Las Vegas pushed them both to the brink of collapse. Jessie was found with signs of assault, and their daughter was the one who called the police. Jon was arrested right in the lobby of the Caesars Palace Hotel, wearing a suit and holding his UFC Hall of Fame trophy. That was the most painful moment. Not in the octagon, but when his daughter witnessed her father being handcuffed in front of dozens of cameras after that incident. Jon was banned from training at Jackson Wink MMA, a place he once considered home. But Jessie still didn't leave. She didn't speak out. She didn't sue. Nearly 2 years later, at UFC 285, when Jon won his shocking victory over Cyril Gane, the first person he hugged was Jessie Moses. They no longer wear rings. They don't call each other husband and wife. But the children still ran into the cage. And Jessie, as always, just smiled and stood behind, letting the stage lights shine entirely on her man. Jon Jones has never been perfect, and perhaps he will never be an ideal husband by Hollywood standards. But if anyone has stood by him through every scandal, every glory, and every time he was dragged into the abyss, it wasn't his coaches, not his teammates, but the woman who never needed to wear a wedding dress to keep a family together, Jessie Moses. The only question that remains is, will that love, silent, quiet, and unnamed, be strong enough to keep Jon Jones standing in the years when there's no longer a cage, no more adrenaline, and no place to hide? A fighter of immense talent and many flaws. For most fighters, scandals are accidents, but for Jon Jones, they feel like the extra beats of his heart. No one in UFC history has ever generated as much controversy, sabotaged as many opportunities, and then returned to the top as quickly as Bones. In 2012, at the peak of his career, Jones crashed his Bentley Continental GT into a utility pole while driving under the influence in Binghamton, New York. He was arrested for DUI, paid a $1,000 fine, and had his license suspended for 6 months. This wasn't just a shock to the UFC community, it was the first time the world realized that behind the spotlight, Jon Jones was a man who couldn't control himself. 3 years later, in April 2015, Jon pushed everything to the limit. He caused an accident in Albuquerque, New Mexico, injuring a pregnant woman, then fled the scene. When police searched his car, they found marijuana, cash, and a fake driver's license. The UFC immediately stripped him of his title and banned him indefinitely. Jon disappeared from the octagon. Those who once called him GOAT began removing his name from rankings. Opposing fighters smirked. And Dana White declared, "Jon is destroying himself." Then he came back, only to get caught for doping. UFC 200, 2016, Jones was pulled from his fight against Daniel Cormier at the last minute after testing positive for 2 banned hormones, clomiphene and letrozole. He cried at the press conference, claiming ignorance and blaming supplements. But fans weren't as easily convinced anymore. A second suspension. It didn't stop there. UFC 214, 2017. Jon Jones knocked out Cormier. This time he celebrated, he yelled, he danced, he was re-honored. But just weeks later, test results showed he tested positive for the steroid turinabol. A third title stripping. The win became a no contest. Cormier, who had been knocked out, had his belt returned, and Bones's image was once again dragged through the mud. People started calling him the doping champion. In 2019, he was sued for battery by a female employee at a strip club in Albuquerque. The incident was quickly resolved with a plea deal, but it only further distorted Jones's image. A year later, he was arrested sitting in his car late at night with a gun, alcohol, and evidence of a gunshot. He avoided jail time again, but no one was surprised anymore. And then in 2021, the incident at Caesar's Palace felt like a final slap. His daughter called the police. Jessie Moses, his girlfriend of 2 decades, was found with signs of bleeding. He was arrested in a suit, still holding the Hall of Fame trophy he'd received just hours before. A moment so tragic, it was farcical. The MMA hero, handcuffed in the lobby of a luxury hotel in front of the world of the... In total, Jon Jones has been stripped of his UFC title 3 times, suspended 3 times, involved in over 5 criminal arrests, faced 4 accusations of violence or banned substances, and caused the UFC to reschedule its entire system 3 times due to his personal troubles. For anyone else, that would be the end, but for Jon Jones, it was all just a lull before a new knockout. The conqueror of unthinkable records. In a world where fame often only exists through wins in the ring, Jon Jones is a living paradox, a man who constantly pushes himself to the brink, yet still becomes the greatest of all time, GOAT, in the eyes of millions of fans. No one else in UFC history possesses such a contradictory record, the most falls, and also the greatest. From the moment he won the light heavyweight title in 2011 at just 23, an age when many other fighters are still practicing low kicks, Jones ushered in a new era in MMA where speed, versatility, and ruthlessness coexist in a long, unpredictable, and incredibly intelligent physique. 16 title fight wins, 12 title defenses. Absolutely undefeated in the octagon if you exclude the technical loss in 2000 and, most importantly, winning titles in both weight classes, light heavyweight and heavyweight. However, if you only look at his achievements, you'll miss a less discussed aspect. Jon Jones is one of the rare champions who seriously invests in community work. In Albuquerque, New Mexico, where he has lived and trained for nearly 2 decades, Jones is a major sponsor of numerous charitable activities. During the COVID-19 pandemic, when Albuquerque streets became chaotic with protests and riots, Jones personally went out, without gloves or protection, with only one command: give me the spray can. He took spray cans from young people who were trying to vandalize the city, persuading them to stop. This video later went viral across the U.S., and the city's residents began to look at Bones differently, no longer a troublemaker, but a part of the community. In 2020, Jones founded the CARE Project, where he provides food, medical supplies, and support to the homeless and black families severely affected by the economic crisis. He doesn't put this organization on television. He doesn't show off in thank you videos. Everything is done with personal funds, taken from his fight purses and previous sponsorship deals. Additionally, he participates in vocational guidance programs for black youth in the New Mexico area, especially those who have been involved in gangs, addiction, or have criminal records. Jones frequently appears as a mentor, organizing boxing sessions, not to train fighters, but to teach emotional control and discipline. In terms of accolades, Jon Jones is a fighter who has been named Fighter of the Year by ESPN, Bleacher Report, Sherdog, MMA Fighting, and the UFC for several consecutive years. In a global poll in 2023, he topped the list of most influential fighters in MMA history, surpassing Khabib Nurmagomedov, Georges St. Pierre, and Anderson Silva. But this is what poses a difficult question. If a person has both achieved miracles and contributed to changing the community, yet is also the center of the biggest scandals in sports, where do we place him in history? Jon Jones is not a clean icon, but he is the only one who dares to live fully with both light and shadow, and make both serve him. That's a kind of victory not found on a scorecard, not recorded in an achievement file. It lies in how you survive after everything you've done to yourself. The fight that ends a glorious career. As of early 2025, Jon Jones still holds the UFC Heavyweight Championship, a title he regained in just over 2 minutes at UFC 285, choking out Cyril Gane as if closing a bottle cap. But since that victory, Jones has almost disappeared. He doesn't accept interview requests, he doesn't appear in the media, and he's not in a hurry to take his next fight, even though opponents are waiting. Tom Aspinall, the interim champion, constantly urges a title unification bout. Fans demand the UFC strip Jon of the belt if he doesn't fight. And Dana White, he's silent. Only when pressured does he confirm Jon has agreed in principle. Everything else depends on the contract. But everyone understands that Jones is negotiating with his silence. Every day he delays, the value of the fight increases. Rumor has it that if the UFC accepts the enormous financial terms, including a percentage of the entire event's revenue, the Jones versus Aspinall fight will take place in late 2025. But there's another, more dangerous theory. Jon is aiming for a super fight with Francis Ngannou, even though Ngannou has left the UFC for PFL. So what, truly, is Jon Jones's future? One possibility is becoming increasingly clear. The fight with Aspinall could be Jon's last professional fight. He's not young anymore. His body has endured over 40 high-level battles. Every training session now is a trade-off between stamina, ligaments, and the ability to survive after the lights in a private live stream. Jones's close friend, a fellow fighter, revealed Jon has been planning retirement since the Stipe fight. He's only staying for one last big score. That final score could be Aspinall, it could be Ngannou, or it could be no one at all, perhaps, after everything. Jon Jones will do something unprecedented, retire while still undefeated, still holding a belt, and without needing another fight to be considered a legend. And if that happens, it will be the first time in UFC history that a fighter ends his career with 2 championship belts, never truly losing, and leaving by his own decision. Jon Jones's future is no longer in the steel cage. It lies in his ability to control the final story he wants to tell, and when you've survived over a decade of scandals, animosity, and bloody arenas, then perhaps the right to end it on your own terms is the ultimate achievement. Jon Jones isn't an ideal role model. He's broken every expectation, both literally and figuratively. But after all the scandals, after being stripped of belts, arrested, and judged, he's still standing, undefeated in the steel cage, unyielding outside of it. No one knows if his next fight will be his last, but if it is, it won't be a finale for an angel, but for a monster who knows how to survive. And surviving, that's how Jon Jones became a legend. We are not responsible if you misunderstand or misapply this content. Please consider, verify, and absorb selectively. Enjoyed it? Give us a like, comment, share, or subscribe to the channel. That's the fire that fuels us to tell more epic stories about other MMA superstars.